All right, and of course, the message coming from there is aligning messages during such conferences. Now, moving on, the Association of Environmental Law Lecturers in Africa University, United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, and the University of Nairobi hosted the 5th ASSELLAU Scientific Conference and General Assembly on Legal and Policy Measures on Genetically Modified Organisms, GMO, in Africa. Now, the aim of the conference is to enhance linkages between science, policy, and law in designing regulatory framework for addressing the questions of adapting genetically modified crops and food in Africa.
This meeting looks at the legal and policy framework for regulating genetically modified organisms in Africa. It is important for two reasons. One, there's increasing food insecurity in the continent, and there's a lot of strides to try and ask ourselves, so how do we solve the food security situation? On the second instance, there is technological development that's been seeking to try and solve that problem through the introduction of genetically modified organisms. So that's the first instance. But on the flip side, there's a lot of concerns across the continent about the health and the environmental impacts of the introduction of those genetically modified organisms. You just know, for example, in this country, government lifted a moratorium that's been there since 2012, in December last year, and after that lifting, there's been court cases trying to deal with that. So this meeting is to try and ask ourselves, so what are different countries in the continent doing? What's the balance between the food security imperatives vis-a-vis the environmental concerns?
The main countries which have been producing GMOs are South Africa, Burkina Faso, Egypt, and Sudan. And from the South African experience, so it's like since 1999, 24 years down the line, South Africa has had adverse environmental impacts like gene flows. There was a study by the South African National Biodiversity Institute which found issues about gene flows, coexistence issues between GM maize and non-GM maize, and effects on non-target vulnerable organisms such as beetles and other vulnerable organisms.
All right, let's switch gears and talk matters cotton farming now. The government